it's Marina, Travel Experta. Today, we're going to be talking about a natural dye and weaving workshop in Mexico. Are you guys ready for an adventure? Let's begin. My friend, we were traveling in Oaxaca with our friends, her family and our family, and my friend loves to do weaving. She's really into the textiles. She's really into the indigenous villages where they have all these different textiles and how they make them. And honestly, it's not something that I've even thought about. It's not like, oh, this is something I really want to do, unlike some of the other things I really love to do. But when she mentioned that outside of Oaxaca, about 45 minutes away, there is a really well-known place that is popular for these textiles, and you could do workshops learning how to do that. The area is called Teotitlan del Valle. It is 45 minutes outside of Oaxaca, and it is with the Mayas Zapatatos. I can't remember the exact name, but it is obviously a distinct indigenous region, and they really still do all of their textiles. And there was this tour that we could do, or an experience that we could do. And I'm like, you know what? This is excellent. I really don't know much about this. I would love to do that. And it's funny because my 12-year-old, my son, and she has 3 kids of her own, he's like, why do we have to do these types of workshops? I'm like, because if we don't, we don't know anything about these things. And when we end up doing these types of workshops, these types of things, we learn more, and maybe we even fall in love with it and want to explore it more and maybe do more of it. He's like, oh, I've never done that. And I just reminded him, remember that one time when we did a day of wakeboarding? We knew nothing about wakeboarding ever. And they totally fell in love with it. And today my oldest son still does wakeboarding a little bit. So there you go. If you don't expose your children to the cool, different experiences and yourself, you won't really learn much. So my friend signed us up. It is in the actual valley. You had to drive there in Teotitlan del Valle. And it was this one guy. It was a family-run business. And he opened it up for workshops. That's what they do. It's a very professional, it's all natural workshop. It was a really cool experience because it's something I would never do. We started off learning how to do everything there is with sheep wool. And so we started off learning how they even do the thread, and it was a really cool process, how they do the thread, how they do the loom, then the natural dyes are natural. Some of them are from flowers. One of the dyes was from this insect that actually is kind of like destroying the cactus that they eat here. Nopal is a very popular food in this region, and this particular insect destroys it. So the indigenous used to take the insect and somehow realize that it has a natural color to it. So now they use it as a dye, a bright red dye. It's so cool. So we were able to do that, and you learn how to crush it and just the whole process, right? The whole class was a process of doing all these different steps until the actual dyeing. We cooked the colors, we cooked the dyes, we put in the thread, so they stayed in there all on open fire. And he even did this because we are in the region of mezcal. He did a mezcal cleansing ceremony. Then while our threads were absorbing the dye, some of these dyes, the colors take weeks. Obviously ours was just a 30-minute wait time, but we really learned about the process. And then while we were waiting for the color to be absorbed, we went downstairs. They have these huge weaving looms. So we were doing the actual weaving, what these indigenous people do. And let me tell you, one thing I have to say, especially living in Guatemala, where you see these textiles everywhere in all these different markets, and Mexico is just as big on it as well. And you see all these foreigners coming in, and even the locals, and that are bargaining the shit out of these people and their handiworks. And the majority of it is all handcrafted, done by hand. I think that everyone needs to take a class like this one to understand the laborious process that goes behind it. Every little thing takes days to do. The thread takes hours. Like, you have to go through the whole thing, through the wool, like that. And that's just the thread. It was so much work just for the thread. Then to grind the dyes first, or gathering the different plants. Some of these plants and these insects you have to dry for weeks on end. Then you have to grind them. Then you have to mix in the proper color with different mixtures and limestones to give you the vibrant colors that you want. And they have hundreds of colors, right? We take this all for granted. Then you have to cook it. You have to let the color absorb. Some of them, like I said, takes 2 weeks or longer. Then, once that is absorbed, you have to have the thread. Each thread has to be separated. And then the designs, and they're all done on these looms. And it is like, the woman was telling us that some things take, between 5 days to a month to do. And we're like, but what does that mean? 5 days to a month? How many hours a day? And it's 10 hours per day, one person only. It's not like they rotate and they don't take breaks like we are accustomed to. 10 hours every single day until that one thing, whatever it is, either a runner or a tapestry or their clothing, takes to do. It is hours. So when you learn the process, the manual labor that goes behind it, you will never negotiate again. And to be honest with you, hearing their prices, I really wonder if they completely undervalue themselves in the first place. So the experience really woke us up. And even though my son was like, I don't like these types of workshops, he was really into a lot of the different steps. He loved the grinding. He loved to make the actual colors. He did the weaving. So your kids, it's such a great thing to do with your kids. They get really involved and they learn the process. Even though they might never use this information again, they have it there. And if by any chance they're in some area, they will have that respect a lot more than just seeing it in the market already being done. So if you could do something like that, I highly recommend. In many places, especially throughout Central America, have these weaving classes, these natural dye classes, workshops that are just really well structured and super fun. Again, I personally really recommend it. And before we went to the actual dye, we went to check out the village as well. It's this cute little village to see how the locals really are and their market. It was just a really fun afternoon. It was only half a day altogether, including the drive and the checking out of the marketplace and the village. So if you guys have a chance to do something like that, I really recommend it. If you have done something like that, please let me know. I'd love to hear your feedback on it. And if you enjoyed this podcast, leave me a review, share it with your friends, and make sure to make every day an adventure.